Okay, I thought I'd give some Dhamma talk for my mother today about the meditation master, mother, Nandamātā. Yeah. So, one time, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana are wandering with a large group of monks in northern India. And then one day they arrive in a village called Velukantaki. And so a large group of monks arrives there in the morning, and they haven't eaten anything. No one knows that they're coming. But then, when Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana, the monks have just arrived, then a messenger comes up to them and tells them, "It's time, Venerable Sirs, the meal is ready." So some person magically knew that they were coming and was waiting for them already. And it turns out as the mysterious person who already knew that the monks would be arriving and is waiting with food for them is Nandamātā, one of the two greatest laywomen disciples of the Buddha. Venerable Sariputta and the monks, they go to Nandamātā's house, and then she offers them the meal. After Venerable Sariputta has finished eating and put away his bowl, then he asks Nandamātā, "But who told you that the Sangha of monks would be coming to your town today?" And then Nandamātā tells him, "I got early in the morning, before dawn, and recited the Pārāyana Vagga. And at the time, a Deva, a divine being, the king of the Yakas, Vesavana, one of the rulers of the lowest heavenly realm, was traveling from north to south and heard my recitation. And then he waited silently until I had finished, and he rejoiced that, 'Good sister.' So he expressed his sadhu, and then Nandamātā asked him, "Who are you, my dear?" And then he answers, "I'm the great Deva King Vesavana, sister." And then Nandamātā says, "Then may this Dhamma teaching that I just recited be my guest's gift for you." And then as response, the king of the Yakas tells her, "Tomorrow Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana and a large group of monks will be arriving at your village without having eaten anything, and you should offer them food and dedicate the offerings to me." So he wants some merit, the Yaka, and that will be your guest gift to me. And so then she tells Venerable Sariputta and dedicates the merit and says, "May whatever merit I gained by this act of giving be dedicated to the happiness of the Deva King Vesavana." And after hearing the story, how Nandamātā got to know that the monks will be arriving, Venerable Sariputta says, "It's amazing, it's wonderful, Nandamātā, that you can communicate directly with such a powerful Deva King, the king of the Yakas." But then Nandamātā answers that the fact that she is able to communicate with Devas wasn't the only amazing quality. And Nandamātā was one of the two foremost laywomen disciples of the Buddha. And the Buddha says, if a mother would encourage her only beloved daughter, she should encourage her like this: "My dear, you should become like Kuchuttara or Nandamātā." And so as lay practitioner, you could still become better than Visakha or Anathapindika, but you wouldn't be able to surpass Nandamātā. She was the lay disciple of the Buddha, foremost in Jhāna, in deep meditation, and her name Nandamātā means Nanda's mother. Nanda was a very common name in India at that time. So it's not the half-brother of the Buddha. It's not connected with that because it was just a very common name, just like Gary or something like that. So I like to call her the meditation master mother. And so it's interesting to consider that you can become a lay Buddhist practitioner foremost in Jhāna. Some people might consider that unrealistic or even impossible. The external circumstances of Nandamātā's life were rather unfortunate. Her husband and her son both died early. But instead of getting lonely or depressed, she used the opportunity to dedicate her life to Dhamma practice. Nandamātā tells Venerable Sariputta that when her husband died, he was reborn as a yaka in the lowest deva realm, and he appeared to her after death in his previous form. But because of that, she didn't experience any alteration of her mind, so she wasn't disturbed or sad because of it. So Nandamātā and her husband had very different level of development of the mind. It's difficult to give a simile. How big the difference is between someone being reborn as a yaka and a non-returner is like such a huge difference. And the Buddha says that if husband and wife want to stay together in this life and future life, then they should develop the same confidence, faith, the same virtue, the same generosity, and the same wisdom. But otherwise, they will be reborn in different realms after death. So naturally, depending on to what level the mind is developed, then depending on who it is, either the wife or the husband goes to a much higher realm, or the other way around, and so they go to different places. And he also tells Venerable Sariputta that her only dear son got arrested and executed on some pretext. But when he was killed, Nandamātā didn't experience any alteration of her mind. And so she says that is another amazing quality that she had. Some parents might find it even uninspiring that a mother is completely unperturbed when her only child gets killed. But it's important to say that this is not because she felt indifferent towards her child, but that's just a dramatic example that shows how different affection and loving kindness is. And so what people call love in English, there are 3 different words for it in Pali. So kama, sense desire; pema, something like affection or liking a person; and then metta, loving kindness. And so pema would be something like affection or liking a person, or someone is dear to you. So it can be mixed with sense desire as well, like between husband and wife. Or this affection or liking someone can be like non-sensual, like between parents and children, or brothers and sisters, friends, or between a junior monk and his senior monk who is the mentor. And so this affection is not always something bad. The Buddha says, for example, if a junior monk has no affection for the senior monk who is his mentor, then he can dismiss him. And so the Buddha also says it's even a helpful condition for developing wisdom. For example, if a young monk has affection for his mentor, he likes him, then he will associate with him and learn from him and take what he says seriously. And so it can be actually in a way good to have this affection. Or for example, if someone has love or affection for the Buddha even says in some suttas that this affection for him can lead to a rebirth as a deva. So it can even lead in some cases to some higher rebirth. But then the affection also has this disadvantage that if, let's say, parents or children get sick or die, then one usually feels affected by it. Or Venerable Ananda, then when the Buddha passes away, Venerable Ananda is very sad that the Buddha passes away because he has this strong affection for him. And affection or liking a person can also easily turn into aversion. So, for example, you like a friend or a child, and then someone criticizes him, and then if you get upset about it, this must be because of the affection. And usually it's also tied up with expectations. So if we like a person, if he does what we expect, but then if he doesn't do what we like, then we don't like him anymore. So I get annoyed or something. Well, metta, loving kindness, would be a kind of friendliness or kindness, wishing another person well, which doesn't depend on what the person is doing. So, but if we, for example, noticing that when we experience this sort of up and down by affection, can we sort of change our attitude or widen our heart, in the sense of make an effort to develop kindness or friendliness, even if the person maybe doesn't do what we like, or maybe the person is unfriendly, and then at least we make an effort not also to be unfriendly, but to at least to develop in this direction, to sort of make the heart or the mind like more vast and less limited. And so this example of Nandamātā is a good example that someone with metta might respond different than we expect. So that if you have strong metta, then you actually don't get disturbed if a close friend or a relative dies. Where we see it as a sign of our loving, how much have we loved. If we have this, usually I think the general perception is, if we love someone very much, then you're very sad that he dies. But actually, if you have real metta very strongly developed, then you actually don't get affected if he passes away, or at least less. But that's because you need some gradual development and some profound Dhamma realization to be unaffected by the death of one's own child. And so, because Nandamātā was already a non-returner, then she didn't get disturbed by any sense contact anymore. So, when the clinging to the five senses is abandoned, then the citta transcends the sense realm completely. And so her peace was far more profound than just not being disturbed by the death of a child. That of peace also actually reached much further than just that. Nandamātā also practiced generosity in an excellent way. So when Nandamātā is making his offering to Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana, then the Buddha sees that she makes this offering with the divine eye, and so he sees it, and he says that she makes an offering which is excellent in 6 respects. And so he tells the monks that Nandamātā made this excellent offering. And so he says, if the donor has 3 qualities and the recipient has 3 qualities, then of this offering, the result of it will be immeasurable merit. And so the offerer is, the person who's offering it is joyful before giving. While giving, the mind is confident and bright, and after giving, the mind is elated. And then from the recipients, they are free from desire, aversion, and delusion, or practicing to be free from that. And so with Venerable Sariputta, obviously that would be then one of the most worthy recipients for the offerings, obviously. But then also Nandamātā had this wholesome intention of giving for developing her own mind. And the Buddha even says, using generosity to developing the mind. On the one hand, that if you practice generosity with this attitude, if the mind becomes free from defilements, and on the other hand, the mind gets elevated and becomes brighter or more wholesome. And so using that generosity in this way, then the Buddha even says it can lead up to Brahmaloka. So it can be a way of developing the heart. Also, Nandamātā's observing of precepts was very pure. She says since she married her husband, she doesn't recall ever thinking about being unfaithful to her husband. And since she became a disciple of the Buddha, she never intentionally transgressed a precept. And so these are 2 other amazing qualities that she had, that she mentions. But her most important amazing qualities were that she had mastered the 4 jhanas and was the foremost lay meditator, disciple of the Buddha, and that she had abandoned the 5 lower fetters. In terms of stories about her life, there are only 2 suttas about her in the whole Sutta Pitaka, so there's not much information. For example, there are more stories about Anathapindika or Visakha in the suttas and the Vinaya, because they were more engaged with external activities, so actively supporting the Sangha. But Nandamātā was the foremost lay meditator, and so she naturally lived more secluded and less involved with activities, and so there's not much exciting stories to tell about her in this sense. And so if her citta already transcended the entire sense realm, and then there's not so much anymore left that would be interesting for you to do externally. I think the best way to understand Nandamātā's character is to look at what is the connection between her chanting of the Pārāyana Vagga and the fact that she is the lay disciple foremost in Jhāna. The Pārāyana Vagga is the last chapter of the Sutta Nipāta, which contains teachings of the Buddha in poetry, in verse. And so if you're interested to read some Dhamma poetry, the Sutta Nipāta, something nice to read. It's not that long, it's about 180 pages. The last chapter of the Sutta Nipāta is called Pārāyana Vagga, the way to the beyond. And 16 Brahmanic spiritual seekers travel across India to meet the Buddha and ask him profound questions about bondage and liberation. And the unifying theme of the questions and answers is the Buddha's favorite inspirational simile for Dhamma practice, crossing over the ocean to the further shore. So just an example, for example, the title of this book, this anthology about Nibbana by Ajahn Amaro and Ajahn Bassano, The Island, is based on Kappa's question of the Pārāyana Vagga, the Sutta Nipāta. And so Nibbana, the island, in the sense of what is stable or safe and secure. And so some people even base some book title on the Pārāyana Vagga. And at the end of the Pārāyana Vagga, it said that if someone understands the meaning of one of those questions and answers and practices in accordance with the Dhamma, then he will go beyond aging and death. And therefore it's called the way to the beyond. So what's the connection between the Pārāyana Vagga, the way to the beyond, and Nandamātā's being foremost lay disciple in Jhāna? What is the ocean we have to cross over? So the Buddha gives some short explanation. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya 35-228. So the Buddha says the eye is an ocean for the person, and its current consists of forms. One who withstands that current consisting of forms is said to have crossed the ocean of the eye, with its waves and vortexes, its sharks and demons, crossed over, gone beyond. The Brahmin stands on dry land. And so the ear and the nose and the tongue and the body and the mind and the objects of the other five senses are ocean for the person. And the mind is an ocean for the person. Its current consists of mental phenomena. One who withstands that current consisting of mental phenomena is said to have crossed the ocean of the mind, with its waves and vortexes, its sharks and demons, crossed over, gone beyond. The Brahmin stands on dry land. So it's a different perspective from what we are used to, the eye, the visual faculty, and whatever we can see, and the other five senses, and then the mind and mental phenomena. This is the ocean we have to cross over and go beyond. And this is of the manifestation of death and decay. And the way to cross over that is the Noble Eightfold Path. And sometimes the Buddha also calls crossing over reaching the end of the universe, which means if you develop jhana, deep meditation, you have reached the end of the universe or crossed over in a relative sense already, because you have left behind most of the universe already. And for example, you have already left behind everything you experience with the five senses. So most of the universe have already sort of crossed beyond it. And so the further your meditation practice develops, the further you have crossed over. And yeah, this is how the quality of Nandamātā, to be foremost in Jhāna, connects with this theme of the way to the beyond, of the Pārāyana Vagga, which he memorized. And so, yeah, usually she would get up early in the morning and chant the Pārāyana Vagga. And then, after she finished the chanting, she would enter Samadhi, and then in this way practice the way to the beyond, actually going beyond to some extent already, crossing over. And so, yeah, if one reads some final verses of the Pārāyana Vagga, you can sort of imagine how Nandamātā chants these verses and then sort of sits down to meditate and actually is then entering Samadhi. It's a nice image. And so it's just the last verse of the Pārāyana Vagga, which says, "The immovable, the unshakable, for which there is no simile. Surely I will go there, I have no doubt about this. Remember me as one with a heart thus resolved." And then, doing that. Yeah, so Nandamātā was not just memorizing the chanting, but actually applying the Dhamma and doing that, what the Pārāyana Vagga was about. And this image of Nandamātā practicing like that also inspired me to memorize the Pārāyana Vagga myself about 2 years ago. And so I also chanted usually once a week and dedicated as gift to the Devas. Yeah, and so because she developed her mind already to a very high level, she was internally always very close to the Buddha. And just like also explained in one of the verses of the Pārāyana Vagga in the end. Yeah, so at the end of the Pārāyana Vagga, then one of the Brahmins goes back to his teacher who is too old to come to see the Buddha, and he relates to him how he met the Buddha. And then his Brahmin teacher asks him, why does he not always stay together with the Buddha? Why did he go away again from him? And so then this other Brahmin answers, and he says that he does not dwell apart from him even for a moment. He says then, diligent night and day, I see him with my mind as if with my eyes. I pass the night paying homage to him. Hence I do not think I'm apart from him. My confidence and rapture, mind and mindfulness do not depart from Gotama's teaching, to whatever direction the one of broad wisdom goes. I pay homage to him in that same direction. Since I'm old and feeble, my body does not travel there, but I go constantly on a journey of thought, for my mind Brahmin is united with him. So in the sense that it's also something that the Buddha says, that the more pure your mind or your heart is, the closer you are to the Buddha. So he says, then even if someone is sort of running after him, following him, but his mind is defiled, then he's actually far away from the Buddha. While even if someone is very physically very far away from him, but his mind is developed to a high level, then he's very close to the Buddha, even though there's a physical distance between them. So the distance between the Buddha and yourself depends on how far the mind is developed. And so in this way, Nandamātā was always close to the Buddha, just like in this chanting of the Pārāyana Vagga. And the phenomena of meditation master mothers has continued up to the present day. For example, also during Ajahn Mun's time, there's a in Ajahn Metiko's Ajahn Mun biography. There's a nice story. A disciple of Ajahn Mun, Ajahn Louis Chandasaro, he stayed some time close to a village called Ba Nongpu, and the people there gave up spirit worship because the monks stayed there, and they taught them about the Triple Gem and the teaching of the Buddha. And so they took refuge, and then Ajahn Louis and the other monks, they taught them also sitting and walking meditation. And then quite a few women made good progress, and they decided to become 8 precept practitioners and moved close to the monastery to hear more Dhamma talks. And they sometimes went to quite secluded places on cremation grounds or forests or caves to meditate. And they exchanged with Ajahn Louis about their Dhamma practice. And then when Ajahn Mun came to stay at Ban Nongpu, then they got even more inspired. And one of them was already, I think, more than 70 years old and came regularly to talk with Ajahn Mun. And when she came to talk with Ajahn Mun, then the monks and novices would always quietly sneak close to the meditation hall where they talked to listen to the conversation, because it was always interesting listening, because they talked about things that came up in her meditation practice, either internally about development of the mind or realizing the Dhamma, or about some external phenomena like meeting of devas and so on. And so this old grandmother had developed the ability to travel to other realms as well, and some ability for mind reading. And Ajahn Mun praised her, and he said she has attained the Dhamma to a high level. There are many monks who are no match for this old grandmother. So we can also in old age still continue to even practice faster than some young practitioners. So there's some so it's inspiring, at least for some, to practice to become a meditation master, mother or father. And I think these days of the ideal for old people, which is broadcasted by the media, is something like that old people stay young and beautiful and healthy until they're 80. From the perspective of the Buddha, that means that you stay intoxicated with youth, health and life, like a teenager until you're old. It's not so great actually. It's also not really realistic. I think obviously sooner or later the body will stop functioning more and more. And so instead of just getting intoxicated with youth, health and life, then instead of that you can become a meditation master, mother who has some profound Dhamma knowledge and realized profound peace by meditation and dedicates her life to Dhamma practice. It's a much nicer ideal to follow than the general thing that they broadcast. Nandamātā had already cut off the 5 lower fetters when she was still alive, and so she crossed over to the further shore already to a large extent. But how far did she reach until she passed away? So just my own speculation, but because she already mastered the 4 jhanas, and additionally she had these profound instructions from the Pārāyana Vagga, I think she probably just ended, like described in Upasiva's question of the Pārāyana Vagga. Nice little verse. Just like a flame extinguished by the wind goes out, is beyond all words, so too the silent sage, liberated from the mentality group, who has reached the goal, is beyond all words. The one who has reached the goal is beyond all limitations. Whatever one says about him, he is not that. When all phenomena have been uprooted, all pathways of language are also uprooted. So this is Upasiva's questions on final Nibbana. And so, yeah, obviously that was also in Nandamātā's mind. If she developed the 4 jhanas and then had these instructions from the Pārāyana Vagga, maybe she even got to the ultimate.